In November of 1914, 53 German sailors stood on a speck of coral in the Indian Ocean and watched their ship burn on a distant reef. For 3 months, that lone cruiser had paralyzed the shipping of an entire ocean, while sparing the life of every civilian crew she captured. It took a single morning to end her, and it left those men stranded, with every ocean between them and home controlled by their enemies. They refused to surrender. Who was the captain his enemies came to admire? What did a handful of telegraph operators do that changed everything? And how do you cross ocean, blockade, and desert with nothing but a stolen island trading schooner? This is Salvo Wire. Forgotten Battles, Untold History. In August of 1914, as the First World War began, Germany faced an uncomfortable fact. Part of its navy was stranded on the wrong side of the world. The East Asia Squadron, the Imperial German Navy's force in the Pacific, lay thousands of miles from home waters, and between those ships and Germany stretched the sea lanes, coaling stations, and patrolling cruisers of the British Empire. Among the squadron's ships was the light cruiser SMS Emden, and her commanding officer, Kapitän zur See, Karl von Müller, a rank equivalent to captain in the British service, believed a single ship might accomplish what the whole squadron could not. He proposed detaching Emden for independent commerce raiding in the Indian Ocean, the crossroads of empire trade, where merchant steamers moved in a constant stream between India, Ceylon, Singapore, and the Suez Canal. Vice Admiral Maximilian von Spee, the squadron's commander, agreed, and in August of 1914, Emden parted company with her squadron and turned west, alone. One piece of deception made the plan workable. Emden carried 3 funnels while the British Town-class cruisers guarding those waters carried 4, so her crew built a 4th funnel of wood and canvas, a collapsible dummy that could be hoisted into place whenever another ship appeared on the horizon. At a distance, the silhouette of a German raider became the silhouette of a British cruiser, and as a result, a merchant captain sighting her would see nothing to run from. Through September and October of 1914, the Emden turned the eastern Indian Ocean into her hunting ground. She stopped Allied merchant steamers one after another, took their crews off, and sent the ships to the bottom, and the manner in which she did it soon became a story in its own right. On the night of September 22, 1914, von Müller brought his cruiser in close to Madras on the southeastern coast of British India. In roughly 10 minutes, the Emden fired about 125 shells into the harbor district, setting the Burma Oil Company's storage tanks ablaze and destroying 346,000 gallons of oil. The material damage was limited, but the effect was not. A lone German warship had shelled a city of the British Raj and steamed away untouched, and accounts describe the fires burning through the night in full view of the shore. Then, on October 28, 1914, came Penang. Entering the harbor at first light, the Emden torpedoed and sank the Russian cruiser Zhemchug at anchor, and on her way out she sank the French destroyer Mousquet. What happened next set the raid apart. With every hour of delay raising the danger to his own ship, von Müller stopped to pull the French survivors from the water. 36 men of the Mousquet were rescued, and were later transferred to the steamer Newburn to be put ashore. That was the pattern throughout the cruise. Von Müller released every captured merchant crew safely before their ships went down, and contemporary accounts describe released crews cheering their captors as the boats pulled away. His conduct was acknowledged even in the Allied press of the day, a fact worth noting because it would matter later. By early November 1914, the tally stood at 25 Allied steamers captured or sunk, plus the 2 warships. Shipping across the Bay of Bengal was close to paralyzed. Insurance rates climbed, sailings were held in port, and dozens of Allied warships were drawn into the hunt for a single light cruiser. But a raider alone depends on coal, on luck, and above all, on silence. To stay ahead of her hunters, the Emden would need to strike at the Empire's communications themselves, and that decision would carry her to a small coral atoll called Cocos. At dawn on November 9, 1914, the Emden anchored off Direction Island in the Cocos Group, a low ring of coral and coconut palms in the eastern Indian Ocean. On the island stood a British cable and wireless station, the junction where the Empire's telegraph lines between Australia, India, and Africa came together. Von Müller sent a landing party of 53 men ashore under Kapitän Lieutenant Hellmuth von Mücke, the ship's first officer, with orders to destroy it, cut the cables, bring down the wireless mast, west and silence the junction. The party waded ashore among the palms and set to work, and in time the mast toppled. But before the wireless fell silent, the station staff had already acted. Accounts describe the operators transmitting a warning of a strange warship at the entrance, men hunched at a telegraph key doing the one thing still in their power. That short transmission decided the morning. Unknown to von Mücke, the first convoy carrying Australian and New Zealand troops to the war was passing about 50 miles to the north. The warning reached its escort, and the light cruiser HMAS Sydney, under Captain John Glossop, peeled away from the convoy at full speed to investigate. Sydney was faster than Emden, better armored, and her guns outranged the German cruisers. When her smoke rose on the horizon, von Mücke could not wait for his landing party. He weighed anchor and steamed out to meet her. The action that followed lasted roughly 90 minutes. Glossop held Sydney at the range his heavier guns commanded, and salvo by salvo, the Emden was wrecked. Funnels falling, fires spreading, her guns silenced one by one. There was seamanship on both decks that morning. What decided the outcome was not nerve, but armor, speed, and range. With his ship burning and unmanageable, von Mücke drove her onto the reef at North Keeling Island to save what remained of his crew, and the morning was still not finished. Ashore on Direction Island, the men of the landing party stood among the palms and watched their ship die on the horizon, and von Mücke had no intention of surrendering. By late morning on that same morning, the Emden lay fast on the reef of North Keeling Island, her steering gear gone, her guns silent, her funnels down, fires burning along her length. Grounding her had been her captain's last order, given by the record so that his surviving men would not drown in a sinking hull, consistent with how von Mücke had conducted the entire cruise. The cost was counted in plain figures. Of the Emden's company, 134 men were killed and 69 wounded. 157 were taken prisoner, among them von Mücke himself. Aboard the Sydney, 4 men were dead and roughly 16 wounded. Captain John Glossop reported the outcome in 5 words. He signaled, "Emden beached and done for." It was the first ship-to-ship victory in the history of the Royal Australian Navy. The Emden's war was over. For the 53 men of her landing party, it was about to begin again. On Direction Island, Kapitän Lieutenant von Mücke and his landing party had watched the battle from the shore, the gun flashes, the smoke, and then the silence. They were now roughly 50 men stranded on a speck of coral in the middle of the Indian Ocean, with no ship and every reason to expect capture. By any reasonable calculation, their war was over. Von Mücke did not agree. Lying in the island's lagoon was a derelict 3-masted schooner named Ayesha, a vessel of 97 tons, though some records put her at 123. That evening, later that morning, while HMAS Sydney was occupied with the wreck of the Emden and her survivors, the landing party provisioned the old schooner, worked her out through the reef passage, and slipped away into the darkness. By von Mücke's own account, the schooner sailed first to Padang, in neutral Dutch Sumatra, threading waters patrolled by Allied warships. Accounts describe her deck crowded with sailors and her rigging strained by monsoon squalls. An island trading vessel pressed into an open ocean passage. From there, at a rendezvous at sea, the entire party transferred to the German freighter Choising, and the little Ayesha was left behind. Aboard the Choising, they steamed west across the Indian Ocean and north into the Red Sea, running a blockade held by British warships until they landed near Hodeida, on the coast of Ottoman Yemen. Every stage of that route deserves a moment of consideration. A 97-ton schooner is a very small ship, smaller than many harbor craft of the day. Yet 50 men had taken her out of a coral lagoon, past an enemy cruiser, through patrolled sea lanes, and delivered themselves onto a friendly shore. And, by the record, the hardest part of their journey had not yet begun. From Hodeida, the road home ran overland, north through Arabia, with hundreds of miles of desert between the landing party and the nearest friendly railhead. Von Mücke wrote that the men traveled by camel caravan, sailors who had never sat a saddle now steering by compass across the dunes, rifles slung, uniforms worn to rags. The desert was not empty. Accounts state the caravan came under attack by Bedouin raiders, and in the worst of it, a 3-day fight near Jeddah, the sailors dug in behind their camels and held their ground. When it was over, 1 officer and 2 men were dead. Von Mücke's memoir, the principal record of the march, describes further losses to disease along the route. Fever claiming men who had already survived a naval battle, a monsoon passage, and a blockade run. They were buried where they fell, their graves marked with whatever the desert allowed. The survivors pressed on, by camel, on foot, and at last by rail, north through the Hejaz toward the Bosporus. Behind them lay Direction Island, the open Indian Ocean, the decks of the Ayesha and the Choising, the Red Sea blockade, and the sands of Arabia. And on May 23, 1915, about 6 months after the guns fell silent at Cocos, and after thousands of kilometers by sail, steam, and desert march, a worn column of German sailors drew up on the waterfront of Constantinople. Kapitänleutnant von Mücke stepped forward, saluted Admiral Wilhelm Souchon, commander of the Ottoman fleet, and delivered the report he had carried across half the world. "I report the landing squad from SMS Emden," he reported. 5 officers, 7 petty officers, and 30 men strong. 5 officers, 7 petty officers, and 30 men. 42 in all, of the roughly 50 who had rowed out to the Ayesha in the dusk off Direction Island. They had lost their ship, their captain, and comrades to battle and disease, but not one of them had surrendered. Karl von Müller spent the rest of the war as a prisoner, and accounts state his conduct was honored even by his enemies. After the war, surviving crewmen of the Emden were granted the right to add the name Emden to their own family names, an honor unique in German naval history. So consider the men of before noon that day. A handful of telegraph operators on Direction Island whose warning summoned the Sydney and decided the battle before a shot was fired. A captain who spared every civilian crew he captured and lost his ship in a single morning. A lieutenant who took a 97-ton schooner and sailed it toward home rather than surrender. Who really won at Cocos? We will let you decide. This account draws on von Mücke's own memoir, The Ayesha, published in 1917, A.W. Jose's Official History of Australia in the War, Volume 9 from 1928, R.K. Lochner's The Last Gentleman of War from 1988, the collections of the Australian War Memorial, and the peer-reviewed 1914 to 1918 online encyclopedia of the First World War. The full titles are on your screen now. If forgotten stories like this one deserve to be remembered, like this video and subscribe so the next one finds you. This is Salvo Wire, Forgotten Battles, Untold History. This has been an educational retelling for educational purposes. The narration and illustrations are AI assisted, and every fact comes from the documented sources listed in the description.